Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, I am joined by a man whose words and resolve defined an entire era. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
Hello, Calvin. I am Winston Churchill. Most know me as the fellow who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during those tumultuous years of the Second World War. Though I've worn many hats: soldier, writer, and even a painter.
It's an honor, Sir Winston. Let's start at the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I made my grand entrance on November 30th, 1874. I chose a rather spectacular setting for it, Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, which was the seat of my grandfather, the Duke of Marlborough.
Not a bad place to start. What was your given name at birth?
My full name was Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Indeed. Winston came from an ancestor of mine, Sir Winston Churchill, who lived back in the 17th century. We Spencer Churchills take our history quite seriously, you see. I always felt that carrying the name of a Cavalier soldier was a bit of a wink toward my own future.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Well, because of my father's political career, I spent a good deal of my early childhood in Dublin, Ireland. It was a place of grand old buildings and a certain damp charm. Later on, I spent much of my time at boarding schools or roaming the English countryside.
What was your family life like?
It was quite typical for the aristocracy of the time, which is to say, a bit distant. My father, Lord Randolph, was a brilliant but busy politician, and my mother, Jenny, was a stunning American socialite. I loved them dearly from afar, but I must say, my most devoted companion was my nanny, Elizabeth Everest. She was my confidant and my rock.
What kind of kid were you?
Oh, I was a bit of a handful. I was rebellious, quite stubborn, and I didn't care much for the rigors of formal education. I had a bit of a lisp and a stutter, which made the classroom a bit of a battlefield for me, but it certainly sparked my determination.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
I suppose my greatest fear was failing to live up to the Churchill name. I was desperately eager to prove myself to my father, who often thought I wasn't quite up to the mark. That fear of being average kept me moving.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
Soldiering was my first love. I had a massive collection of over 1,500 toy soldiers. I would spend hours arranging them in elaborate battles. I knew then that I wanted to be where the action was.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I excelled in history and English composition, mostly because I enjoyed the stories. I also took a great liking to fencing. There's something about the thrill of the duel that always appealed to me.
What was your first job?
My first real foray into the world was as a sub-lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars. I was a cavalry officer, which was exactly the sort of dashing start I'd hoped for.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I think it was during my time in the military. While others were content with the routine, I felt a driving need to be in the thick of things. I started writing as a war correspondent while serving as a soldier. I realized I had a knack for describing the world in a way that moved people.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Escaping from a prisoner of war camp during the Boer War. I climbed over a wall while the guards weren't looking. At the time, I just wanted to be free, but that escape made me a national hero in Britain and launched my political career.
That's a huge break. Speaking of which, what would you say was your biggest break?
Aside from my escape, it was being appointed First Lord of the Admiralty in 1911. It gave me the chance to modernize the Royal Navy and prepared me for the leadership roles that would follow.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Oh, I had many quote-unquote wilderness years. There was a long period in the 1930s where I was out of favor politically. People thought I was a spent force, an old-fashioned relic. I was lonely in my warnings about the rising dangers in Europe, but I kept writing and kept speaking.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. Never give in was my motto. Even when I was relegated to the backbencher seats in Parliament, I occupied my time with writing books and laying bricks at my home, Chartwell. Action is the best cure for despair.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
A very specific one. I did my best work in bed. I would wake up, have a hearty breakfast, and stay under the covers until noon, dictating letters and speeches to my secretaries. And of course, a midday nap was non-negotiable. It allowed me to have 2 mornings in one day.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I think I would have been a full-time writer or perhaps a professional landscape painter. I found such peace at my easel.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a whirlwind of travel and adventure. I was in Cuba, India, and Sudan, always looking for a story and a skirmish. I was young, energetic, and quite convinced that I was destined for something grand.
How did relationships change after success?
My marriage to my dear Clementine was my greatest support. Success brought a lot of fair-weather friends, but Clemmy kept me grounded. She wasn't afraid to tell me when I was being difficult.
Did fame bring happiness?
It brought satisfaction, which I think is more durable than happiness. To be at the center of great events is a heavy burden, but a deeply fulfilling one.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The lack of privacy and the constant scrutiny. Every mistake I made, and I made plenty, was magnified for the world to see.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often thought I was just a warmonger or someone who didn't care about the common man. In reality, I was deeply involved in social reforms early in my career, helping to establish things like the minimum wage and labor exchanges.
What was your darkest moment?
The failure of the Gallipoli campaign during the First World War. It was a disaster, and I was blamed for it. I was forced to resign, and I truly thought my political life was over.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I regretted the times I let my impulsiveness get the better of my judgment. I always tried to learn from them, though. As I once said, success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
My black dog, my bouts of depression. People saw the defiant leader, but I often had to fight very private battles with my own moods. I used painting and writing as my weapons against it.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
When I was voted out of office in 1945, right after the war ended, it was a shock to say the least. But I handled it with a smile, went back to my writing, and eventually the people invited me back for a second term as Prime Minister.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It allowed me to live comfortably at Chartwell, which I loved, but it didn't change my character. I remained the same stubborn, cigar-chomping fellow I always was.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My wife, Clementine. She was my most trusted advisor. And, in a historical sense, my ancestor John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough. I spent years writing his biography, and his brilliance as a commander inspired me daily.
What was life like in your final years?
They were peaceful. I spent a lot of time in the south of France, painting the sunlight on the water and enjoying the company of good friends. I finally had time to reflect on the long journey I'd taken.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was still a member of Parliament until 1964. I was also putting the finishing touches on various writings and ensuring my historical accounts were in order.
When and where did you pass away?
I died on January 24, 1965, at my home in London. Curiously enough, it was the same date my father had passed away 70 years earlier.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I was an avid bricklayer. I actually joined the Amalgamated Union of Building Trade Workers. I built several walls and a summer house at Chartwell with my own 2 hands.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Oh, there were always rumors about how much I drank. While I certainly enjoyed my champagne and brandy, I always said I had taken more out of alcohol than alcohol had taken out of me.
What was your most unique habit?
I had a habit of wearing silk underwear. I found it much more comfortable for my sensitive skin. Only the best for the Prime Minister.
What was your favorite food?
I was very fond of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, and I simply couldn't do without a good turtle soup to start a meal.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
The Savoy in London was always a favorite. They knew exactly how I liked my steak.
What was your favorite book?
I was a great admirer of Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. The prose is magnificent.
Did you have any known rivalries?
My political rivalry with Lady Astor was legendary. We traded barbs constantly. She once told me if she were my wife, she'd poison my coffee. I told her if I were her husband, I'd drink it.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
During the Boer War, when I was hiding in a coal mine after my escape, I was absolutely terrified of the vultures and the rats. It wasn't very statesman-like, but sitting in the dark waiting for a train to jump on is a memory that stays with you.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
Once, during the war, I was staying at the White House, and President Roosevelt came into my room while I was fresh out of the bath, wearing nothing at all. I simply told him that the Prime Minister of Great Britain had nothing to hide from the President of the United States.
Did you ever prank someone?
I preferred witty traps in conversation rather than physical pranks. I loved setting someone up to say something foolish and then knocking them down with a quick retort.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
Probably my collection of exotic animals at Chartwell. I had black swans and a very large collection of butterflies.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And above all, never, never, never give in.
So Winston, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
It has been a sheer delight, Calvin. To look back on a life lived so fully is a joy. My only hope is that those listening remember that history is not just a list of dates. It is a series of choices made by people just like them. Stand tall, keep your chin up, and always find time for a bit of painting. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Sir Winston. What an incredible look at a life that shaped the world. We've covered everything from toy soldiers and daring escapes to silk underwear and White House encounters. And that wraps up another conversation from beyond the grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.